Welcome to Disruptive Business Leadership. As you know, we generally try and wait for the LinkedIn Live to get going. But I'm happy to announce that Lynette's going to show me after this that we do this correctly. And as you know, this is a weekly session that we do. But far more importantly, once a month we are and we have gone live. So, well, how weird is that? How lucky are we to have our special guest? I'm happy to announce that he's going to show me after this. I'm happy to say that Lynette is our guest once a month, and we are very, very privileged and honored. And I really mean that, to have you look after the show, and your amazing personality to the table, even if you told us that we need to bugger off at some stage. We are going to get started. I just wanted to first of all recognize the fact that that our good friend Meryl, puts the most amazing comments for us, helps us bring people in. There are many people that are known for many things, but one thing that we know from Meryl is he's a master connector. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Lynette, and we're going to kickstart and see where this takes us today. Over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Roy. Pleasure to be back with everybody. I'm Lynette Johnston. I'm a LinkedIn strategist based in New Zealand. And today we are looking at leadership delivery under pressure. I know that delivery has been your focus for the last 3 episodes of Disruptive Business Leadership. And so today we're wrapping that up with the 4th one about leadership delivery under pressure. And we've seen a lot of that going on recently in the world around us. So today we're going to be looking at how leadership delivery is interpreted under pressure and examine the gap between what's delivered and how it is perceived by those receiving it. Now, I'm hopeful that our team members here are going to provide practical ways that leaders can shape visibility, narrative, and understanding in high stakes moments. Now, of course, that doesn't always mean what goes on in the media. It can go on behind closed doors in board meetings and team meetings and other important places. So today we're going to be looking at leadership from a business perspective and have a think about how we can be more deliberate in how we are visible online and with our teams. So it's fair to say, I think, that leaders are judged by ideas and less by what they deliver than how it's seen, understood, and remembered. Because we need to keep in mind that leaders are under pressure. They're under time pressure, stakeholder pressure, they're under visibility pressure, and under narrative pressure. So these are the things that we are going to be discussing today once we've quickly whizzed around the room and introduced our other panelists. Mel, I'm going to start with you. Who you are, where you're from, and all the usual things you like to tell us.
Thank you again for your warm welcome, and to our amazing guests who are joining us live and on replay, and to Lynette for setting the tempo for the last episode of Deliverability. I'm a girl from the Bronx, which means that the Mets started playing yesterday, and our score beat the score of the New York Yankees. So, what you need to know, I am certified in trust, and I want to invite inclusive leaders and their dynamic teams who are interested in creating a modern workplace and a modern workforce where transparency matters, where community is treasured, where everyone is seen, heard, and valued. Great ways to do that are in between hybrid, live, and virtual events. And delighted to join you today.
Thank you so much. Martin.
Morning, everybody. I'm Martin Stark, the Courage Champion. And I'm a bit of a disruptive storyteller. And the reason I say that, because today we're talking about leadership and delivery. And for the last month, we've all been disruptive in a way that we didn't think we would be. But what have we had to do? We've had to adapt. And I have a book, Courage Your Right Hook, and it tells you all about how to adapt. And I'm a keynote speaker. And another thing is I have a novel which I've submitted to 12 literary agents. And I had a lovely email this morning telling me, thank you, but no thank you. Because what's one thing that happens in life? You get knockbacks, but you have to adapt.
Thank you, Martin. Good luck with finding an agent.
Yeah,
I'm sure
thank you.
the right person will come along. Roy.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Roy Kowarski, and as you know, I own a company called Out There Branding. I call myself the promotional product disruptor, but I'm going to tell you something interesting that happened to me this week, because this actually ties into my opening, statement. I'm busy redoing my website to show more that that I'm involved with trade shows, and my web developer came back to me and said to me, people that search for the website, the percentage is 90% for exhibitions and 10% for trade shows. So let me start again. If you have a look at my profile, you'll see that I've changed the word trade shows to exhibitions. And if you about what I do, I call myself the promotional product, specializing in exhibition preparedness and a framework to assist companies to achieve outcome. So I've had to really change. And isn't that the essence of leadership? And I'm not calling myself a leader, but isn't that the essence of business leadership, disruptive business leadership? That when you find there's a better way to do things, you don't resist the change, you embrace the change. And that's what I've had to do. The biggest, this is again very interesting, because I've had this conversation with the web developers, and they've asked me a lot of questions. And the single most important question that they've asked me is, what do you want to be known for, and why should people come to you? And the answer that I've given for this is that people come to me because I make it easy for them. I take away the pain points for them. I remove all the challenges that they have to worry about. And the other thing is this, is that you can only build your business and your personal brand on two C words: competency and credibility. And on the basis of this whole aspect of that we've been doing, I can tick the box for competency quite easily, because I am competent. And the other thing is, I do have a huge amount of credibility. Have a look at my LinkedIn profile. Have a look at my LinkedIn recommendations, my Google reviews. There is not one negative one. And the other thing that is for me is so important is that I turn repeat business. And I had a conversation with someone yesterday that asked me, I was in a BNI, which is Business Week International, 1-to-1, and they said to me, we've just joined BNI. What does it mean to be what are the different tier level referrals you get? So a 1-tier referral is I get business from Lynette. 2-tier referral is Lynette introduces me to somebody else. This week I hit a 9th-tier referral. So 9 different people in the sequence. And that for me ticks the box for credibility, because you would never be referred on to one to the other in 9 times. So this is a bit of a long introduction today, but that's what I do. I own a company called Out in assisting those companies that are struggling to not to do when they take a stand at an exhibition. Back to you, Lynette.
Thank you, Roy, and congratulations on all those changes that you talked about, and a great week that you've had. And it speaks volumes for your credibility and your competence that you should be getting all this recognition for the work that you do. And this would be a good time to say thank you for hosting this event every week and allowing me to host it once a month. I sneak in there on the last Saturday of the month. So thank you for that. So let's get back to our discussion.
Can I just ask one question, so that I can just ask the audience, and then they can put is next weekend is the Easter weekend. And the 4 of us were debating, should we host it over the Easter weekend? So there are 2 aspects. The one is that people are at home for the weekend, and they'd welcome listening to, this kind of conversation. Or the other is people are going away and we should take a break. So what we would welcome is what you think in the comments. Back to you, sorry.
Thank you. All right, so let's get underway with this and talk about what delivery under pressure really means. And we're going to go around the room and ask our panelists exactly what that means to them, because I think that it's important that we have a look when we're thinking about this, to look at what does pressure mean? Does it mean just in our own business? Does it mean in our personal lives? Does it mean in what's going on in the world at large? Now, I think that it's fair to say that everybody has different pressures in their lives, and that inevitably affects what goes on for them and for all of us at work. But we're here today to talk about what changes for a leader when pressure increases. How do they respond? How can they respond in a way that is going to bring their team with them? Yesterday, I had lunch with a colleague who's written a management book called Leading from Behind. And I really like that, because I think that shows that then they are behind the team, really helping to move them forward. They're a person who uses trust and inspire to motivate their team. So let's talk about, where do we see leaders getting this wrong and why they do it so often? And we'll start, I think, again with Mel, looking at what delivery under pressure really means. Some of your thoughts from you on this.
I think one of the two biggest things that are popping up, and especially in terms of pressure and in terms of deliverability, are the need for clarity and what I like to call divine timing. If you're at a hybrid, live, or virtual event, there's 3 separate timing changes that can happen from a sense of pressure, whether things work correctly. If you're in a live room where the temperature isn't correct, because of the air temperature, or because there's sterno, or there's some sort of external sound, or you're at an event where the technology is not necessarily working to your liking. And in some cases, besides clarity and divine timing, I'd like to add the pressure to show up across time zones and across the challenges of when you're working with people in a hybrid workplace. They're across different schedules, different time zones, and sometimes there are different languages involved. So I think the clarity, communication, and divine timing would be the 3 deliverables that I'd like to add to the mix.
Well, that sounds like a very sensible move. It's a wonder anybody gets understood with all of those kind of things going on in the background, to be fair, isn't it? Martin, have you got some ideas on this one too, delivery under pressure, what it means?
So there are 4 false beliefs. The first one is what we tell ourselves, I can't do. Now, in terms of pressure, I want to give you 3 external things which impact a leader, but also impact the team. What do others say? So let's say team members, you can't do this. Then what does the organization say? Might be peers on the leadership team or other stakeholders. Well, we can't be doing this. And then what the market says, customers don't like this. Especially in what we're seeing right now is, I think it's that once in a generation, GFC, .com collapse, that massive upheaval that probably was always there and is now happening. What is happening now? As a leader, what's the one thing emanating from all of these forces is fear of circumstances, fear of change, the what if, or what if this happens versus what if this happens, and bringing clarity. Every week I talk about storytelling, but the stories that are circulating are catastrophizing. What if this happens and the henny penny or Chicken Little, the sky is falling in? That is what is happening within the market, within the organization, within your team. And as a leader, clarity is the one thing that enables the resilience that's needed to happen. What we did during COVID, what we did during the GFC, what we did during the dot-com collapse, and the leader who can't communicate with clarity, especially now, the pressure will skyrocket, not settle.
I agree. Clarity has so much relevance in so many different situations in the world. Today, Roy, some thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think that one of the things, well, I mean, there's, everyone's covering it in different angles, but one of the things that I think is really important, and it falls right on business leadership, is when there's pressure, the leader needs to stabilize the ship. That they need to take a step back and not allow the pressure just to become something that brings everybody down. What does that look like? It looks like we have a situation. We are under pressure for this particular aspect. Let's not focus on the problem. Let's start thinking about some solutions. And so what it does is it deflects from holding the pressure in the place to trying to find a way to move away from it. And that's what I think is really important. And that's why that is an absolutely incredible question, because it ties in so strongly with our title of Disruptive Business Leadership, that when we're under pressure, we panic. And as everyone said, with the fear creep, the anxiety, all of these things creep. I'm a problem that says, here's the problem. We can either dwell on the problem or we can focus on the solution. Dwell on the problem or focus on the solution. And I think that, for me, this is a viewpoint, is a way to take off the pressure off by focusing on solutions and putting our mind into, we are under these pressures, but let's work out what we can do and not just freeze and panic. Back to you.
All right, and I think that's a really good segue into another section of this discussion that I wanted to pose to everybody today. And that was about being seen, understood, and remembered, because if we're going to be talking about solutions to the problem of lack of clarity, of the message not being clear to people, of people saying one thing and those hearing it perceiving another, which seems to happen an awful lot, and not just in business, but often in our personal lives as well, then we need to be looking at how we can move that forward. And if you want to maybe have a chat about some of these things, what can we do to make sure that our work, our thoughts, our thought leadership, what we're saying, the messages that we are delivering, how do we make sure that it's clearly understood? Because I think it's very easy for us to think it's understood. We mean one thing, but somebody with a different perception of the situation will see it in a completely different light. And it's already been pointed out that all of us, we're in different parts of the world, we're different people with different kinds of businesses. We each have a different perspective on life. And so consequently, what we bring and what we say and how we deliver that might be cultural. It might be totally how our personalities have developed and what we have learned over the years. But other people might see that in a different light. So, for example, I'm a naturally gregarious, over the top, completely insane sort of person. So I try to behave nicely on these events. But what that means is that some people don't resonate with that, particularly introverts. They find my delivery really difficult. And so I have to make sure that when I am talking with a different group of people that might be made up of a mix of personality types, I tone it down and try to make sure that I cover all bases. So I think that our personalities have something to do with this too, our background, how we deliver, the kind of messages that we have to impart. And so let's talk about how do we try, or how do we make sure that the message that we are delivering is the message that we want to be heard. Mel.
I love the wisdom of our panel and of our guests. And the one thing I can say, Lanier, as an introvert, the one thing that you always bring, and it ties into something Martin said before, which is about the perception and the narratives, and them from different perspectives of stakeholders or of team members. But you hold space really well for introverts, for extroverts, and for ambiverts. I think the key to that has to do with Martin's comment about perception and narratives. We need to acknowledge what's going on. Sometimes I think people panic because they feel there's a hidden truth that no one is acknowledging. I had this conversation recently with a team member after a training that we have actually both attended, not by accident. It'll really help us enhance what we're doing going forward. I think us, and I mentioned this before, my team member and I were at a training that we didn't plan. We had no idea that each other was on the RSVP list. But the one thing that we agreed was the people who held the training, there was an incredible acknowledgement of hidden truths. There was an acknowledgement that we were attending and everyone had different energies. And the one thing they acknowledged with transparency was the amount of fear that was in the room. It's not something leaders normally do. People, and Martin mentioned it from the perspective of storytelling or narratives, many people are avoiding the emotions that are in the room. They're trying to diffuse the situation, while others are trying to figure out what's happening. And I think sometimes someone just acknowledging the hidden truths, even if it's just one, there's something happening and we're trying to fix it. The energy's not right. We're trying to elevate it. The atmosphere isn't right. We're trying to correct it. Because I think sometimes people don't like acknowledging what's not working in a room. On the other hand, when everyone can see it, feel it, and hear it, we need to acknowledge it so people know, as what Lanier's saying, they know that you're hearing them and that you're acknowledging the truth of what's happening. It is the hardest thing to do as a leader. It's the hardest thing to do as a facilitator. It's hard when you have a program and you want it to, or an agenda that you're trying to follow, but sometimes acknowledging that there may be an emergency that someone else is trying to help you navigate can just help increase the comfort level and elevate the energy that's in the room.
Yes, the subtext of what's going on is always really interesting, isn't it? And everybody seems to think there's something different going on. That's a fascinating one. Don't know quite how you get around that. Martin, you might have some ideas though.
Yeah, Melanie, I'd love your view on the Statue of Liberty. I've never seen it, but I'm guessing that you've seen the Statue of Liberty on a sunny day, on a rainy day, and a foggy day. It's some. Now, my
all
point.
All three, dear friend. All three.
All the three. Now, the Statue of Liberty doesn't change when it's sunny, rainy, or foggy. Now, the sunny day, blue skies, everything's fine. Now, the stormy day is the leveraging what Melanie said about fear is dogma. There's always a dominant voice, and it's usually dogma. Now, the foggy is people are so scared, they only say. The only time they move out of their fear is when you've explained everything to them. My point here is, as a leader, you need to guard against those two voices, because if you're not careful, that will become the driving narrative. We've done this before, it's going to fail, or what's going to happen? It's going to be really bad. And that is going to suck and zap the energy out of everybody. Like the 95%, there's usually two dominant forces in a large team, and there's the dogma, the dinosaur, and there's the drama, that henny penny that I've mentioned about earlier. Now, I know Roy does his washing and ironing He irons his shirts at Bondi after he's done his washing at Bondi Beach with Kowarski washing powder. But he's steady as a ship. He records the video and his shirts are so pressed because he irons his shirt at Bondi. I know I'm making him laugh and bringing humor into this because there has to be a level of relatability. There has to be that Statue of Liberty holding the torch, holding the guiding light, having the shine, having that beacon. In good times, on sunny days, on bad days, on stormy days, but also on foggy days when it's so hard to see what's going on. Be the shining light, do those really pressed creases and immaculate collars like Roy has at Bondi Beach, whether it's rain, hail or shine.
Isn't he just the master teller, storyteller?
And cheeky. I always love you speaking after I've been cheeky.
Relatability, though, Martin, I think is extremely
Yes.
important because it's how you build the relationships with people, isn't it? And I think that's important at all levels of anything, whether it's a small community group or whether it's at the highest levels of government. That relatability absolutely has to be there, which is exactly what you were doing. Telling fibs was great. Relatability still comes into it, right? Nobody believes for a moment that Roy irons his t-shirts. I certainly don't anyway. But I love the idea of that and the image that you put into our minds around that. So Roy, have you got a good comeback for Martin?
Yeah, well, certainly first it's not going to be related to ironing.
Oh, okay.
Because that I came myself. One of them is not an ironer. But, I thought that what I would do is say I'm going to put two words on the table. One of them is trust, and the other is teams. And with regards to trust, in fact, let me go the other way around. With regards to teams, the minute you involve your team, you bind them into the way forward. The minute you isolate them, that you have resistance going forward for any ideas. So in any good leader, I think importance is to be able to be trustworthy, to be able to be seen as a trusted person. How many times have you or me not been in companies where you can see that people don't trust each other? They don't know who's going to be talking about who's going to be passing the stories around the room, and who's going to be running to the different person after the meeting to say, "Oh, Martin, do you hear what Lynette did at the meeting? And Mel, did you see what Mel did?" The only way that you can fix that is to be a trusted leader and to involve your team. And each person has to feel important and an important piece of the puzzle of a team. My name is Roy, and I'm out.
I agree that we do have to make sure that our team members feel involved in part of what's going on and listened to. I think without that, it's very hard to lead from the front or behind, really, to be fair, because people aren't trusting us, and we do need to develop that trust. And that happens over time, and it happens because of consistent behavior that people understand and they see, and they know that that is authentically you. If you're one person today and another tomorrow, then that does not build trust. And I think that is really part of what we're talking about here today, is even though we are discussing deliverability, we are in fact talking about trust, because we all need to be seen as trustworthy. I'd like to move on to some examples of what we've been talking about today, some real world examples. And I think that we can probably all bring to mind several very well-known ones, but I'll start the ball rolling on this by talking about an incident here in New Zealand a few years ago now, where the head of a highly respected business organization, a business association rather than actually a business itself, made an inappropriate remark to a reporter. Now, that obviously was the wrong audience to make that remark to. He felt that it was entirely an appropriate remark, but when that got out into the media, public opinion turned against him. He recognised that it was no longer appropriate to be talking about issues that he had raised in this conversation with the journalist, and in fact, he lost his job. Now, he was very well known in the media, high profile person in New Zealand, and it had absolutely shocking consequences for him too in his personal life, as I recall. Now, it's very easy for us to sit here as people who are not often in the public eye, except for our wonderful lives, but we are not often, we don't have the media focused on us and asking us difficult questions and trying to catch us out. But even so, I think it's really important that if we think about the audiences that we are aiming at, the people that we do speak to, whether it is on a live like this or our team members or stakeholders, whatever it is, that we do think about how our message is going to be perceived by those people. Will they think that we are just promoting ourselves? And do they think that we've got these huge egos? Do they think we're open to new ideas and to listening? So those are the things I think that we, from a leadership perspective, need to be keeping in mind when we are delivering to whichever group of people who are in front of us or who are on our screens. So let's go around the room and talk about some other examples of real world examples about, well, let's make it tangible and memorable, talking about delivery and how that comes across to people, our messages. Mel.
You're reminding me of a story that I held a live stream earlier. We Rise and Soar open house, and exquisite Eve Voyeveda joined me, and an inspiring team member, and she's got a wonderful book out about our communication styles and how we learn to talk about as leaders. And in the process, we were talking about one of the days when we met. And we met in online groups where we didn't have a direct relationship yet, but in the process of hybrid events across the miles, we got a chance to get to know each other. The one thing she reminded me of today was sometimes as leaders and sometimes in our world, people are measuring return on investment. They're measuring key performance indicators. They're measuring the goals. And one of the things I was saying to Eve that I believe has enhanced our relationship as collaborators, as referral partners, and just as dear friends is we were able from the beginning to focus on what I like to call return on energies and engagement. I think it's an opportunity that leadership misses. And I learned to make it tangible, to keep sharing the story because it's memorable. It's solidified friendships. It's solidified collaborations. It's solidified referral partners. I hosted an event, and in the venue, I noticed that the stage that people were speaking from, the theater lights made it so hot for people on stage that I could not turn on the heat in the rest of the room. Now that made every attendee uncomfortable unless you were eating a hot beverage. So we had hot beverages. And people are laughing. I kept talking about the temperature of the room and that we needed to change the temperature so no one passed out on stage. So we became a joke, a running theme, and it actually elevated the energies by the end because you had people walking around in winter coats. You had other people walking around in sleeveless shirts. Someone was in a suit jacket. And we ended up that day in the process of temperature. We learned to really discover as Martin would say, the stories that were in the room. Some really strong relationships formed that day. And we explained it to the people who were joining us online. You'll see people, some look like we're dressed for winter. It's kind of like when Roy and Martin and Roy may have on a winter vest, I'm in a sleeveless top. It became an opportunity for conversation as opposed to us feeling like you were on stage in a pressure cooker. We talked and acknowledged the discomfort that was in the room. It became an opportunity to really keep explaining as someone new came in, as someone kept asking what was up with the temperature. It became the discussion topic of the day. It changed the perception, it changed the narrative, and it increased our comfort levels in a community. It became an opportunity that was memorable. And ever since then, I always joked, I promise you, there'll be heated upcoming events. It became something funny as opposed to something uncomfortable.
I love that idea, that out of what could have been something miserable and really a disaster, you turn that into something that really had meaning for so many people. That's a really, really clever way of working with these things, Mel, because we do anything that can go wrong will go wrong, often with events and particularly live events. And so turning that around like that is a fabulous story. Thank you for sharing that. Martin, I know you'll have something to share with us too on this.
I'm going to go back to the 1990s, the days mobile phones were expensive bricks and cable was the challenger to your traditional telephone company. So in Australia, it's Telstra. In Britain, it was British Telecom or BT. And BT ran campaigns. You got cheaper rates for adding your friends and family. And it became known about your friends and family. And a cable company had one very clear campaign. BT is more expensive than cable. Tell that to your friends and family. And that was more memorable because the whole campaign was disrupted by, you're more expensive, come to us. And cable grew and grew because it was cheaper, it was more innovative than the traditional. And my point here is leadership, when you're seen as static and stale, another leadership message will be followed. And it could be the dogma or the drama that I was mentioning earlier. So make sure what you're saying and delivering is on point, is aligned to what your audience needs.
That makes a lot of sense. Very easy to get off track, no question. Roy.
Well, I was thinking in terms of value. I was thinking in terms of, what value is being delivered. And I had a very interesting conversation this last week, in fact, yesterday, with a senior marketing lady for a national organization. And I started off the conversation by saying to her, I call myself the promotional product disruptor and whatever, but I didn't say that. I said to her, most merch and product-based people are seen as trying to take over the role of the marketing person. I said to her, that's not what I will do. I will help you in your role and provide support to you and bring my knowledge, experience, and expertise to you to make you look good in your job. And the answer to me was, do you know that I've had many, many, many conversations to speak to many people, but nobody's ever said that to me. And so my point is this, that when we bring value to delivery, we bring good things and we help. It's when we say, we're happy to help with the delivery. We're happy to be part of it. It's like will you somebody that's interested in exhibitions? Will you keep an eye for anybody that's looking for merch? Nobody and anybody and somebody is actually nobody. You have to be specific, and that's the other part of what I wanted to say is you got to bring value, but you got to be very clear and specific about what it is that you want to be part of that delivery.
That makes sense to me, Roy. Thank you. Hello, Ilia. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you so very much for joining us. We're well through our conversation today. So Martin has just indicated that he needs to leave us fairly shortly. So I just think I might move away out of the sun, out of behind the logo. Actually, just give me half a second. I'll just shift a bit because Roy's hiding me behind a logo, which is probably a very good idea. But anyway, so and here's Felipe too. Oh my goodness me! All right, so I've got some great questions for you. So let me just because you have to leave, Martin, I'll just change the order slightly and give you the opportunity to maybe just wrap up what we've been talking about today from your perspective, since you have to disappear off and do great, wonderful things. Tell us, just leave us with something that you think people need to remember from our conversation today.
Be succinct, because cumbersome, lengthy, flabbergasting conversations dilute the message, whereas being succinct delivers it.
And with that, thank you very much for joining us.
All right. You probably get the meaning with the words I was using. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
We'll see you next time.
Right.
All right, Felipe and Ilia, we're talking about deliverability today, and I don't know whether you've been following the conversation or have seen the different ideas that we've been sharing. But I wanted to give each of you the opportunity to contribute to the conversation that we've been having, since we did start late, so we won't be finishing at the top of the hour. We've got a few more minutes than you might actually be expecting. So Ilia, let me just start with a question for you. What signals do you think that leaders are unintentionally sending when they're under pressure? What signals are they sending when they're under pressure?
When they are under pressure, they might send not being capable to handle the deliverables. Being under pressure, it depends on how the person is being seen. It's been seen calmed. It's been seen that, even though there's a rush, there is there can be some weight on their, on top of their shoulders. The person is under control and managing the situation, understanding that even some deliverables or outcomes might not be the unexpected, the expected one, and it still will be provided solutions in an action plan forward, even though the results might not be the ones they were expecting in the beginning.
Thank you. Felipe, you're in the executive search, hiring and recruitment area. So let me ask you this, from a hiring and executive perspective, how much of a leader's reputation is based on actual delivery versus perceived delivery? And who can I hear in the background? Who's got their LinkedIn on so that we can hear a bit of feedback through there? Somebody's got that happening.
Shall we go on mute, and then it'll go away anyway?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. If we could all mute when we're not speaking, that would be great. Felipe, how much of a leader's reputation is based on actual versus perceived delivery?
That's an excellent question, Lanaire, and hello to everyone. It's great to see everyone. At the end of the day, a great example of that right there is people might be perceived positively by maybe their leader, and they think that's all that matters. But when they don't have a good reputation amongst their peers and their team, it impacts them. Perfect example, a leader who tries to keep an employee because they're too good and they don't want to lose them. One of the things that I've been able to help leaders understand in the mindset shift is, if you keep on promoting people, people will want to keep on working for you because you have a reputation of helping people succeed and achieve their goals. So that perceived perception might get you an opportunity here or there, but it's not sustainable. It has to be the results driven, the actual, like, you know, on my resume, I can say, hey, I'm great at recruiting and reducing turnover. But when I say that I've reduced turnover by at least 20% at every company I've worked at, that result sends a message of delivery that, oh, he actually can do what he says and he's done it, versus, oh, he thinks he has all the skills to be able to do it. So I think that reputation is huge. And when you have a reputation, look, we have a very transparent world right now with Glassdoor and reviews and all these things where your reputation can get smeared, whether it's accurate or not. So it's to your benefit to make sure that you have one that is sustainable.
I like that. Nicely framed. So thank you. I understand it's difficult because both of you just dropped into the middle of the conversation, but it's like you've been listening to all the rest of it. So thank you very much indeed for just seamlessly sliding in there. Mel, I'm going to come back to you now and ask you whether you've ever been in a situation where the delivery was solid, but in actual fact, because the messaging just wasn't right for some reason, maybe the audience didn't kind of get it, it just did not land properly, or it had a different effect than was intended. Ever been in a situation like that? And how was it resolved? Was it resolved?
So the challenge of being in an environment like that was one in which a shared vision wasn't communicated. So people had different expectations. We come to the table bringing different things. If we're at an event following an agenda, if we're at a meeting that has a certain time frame, we're expecting certain things to happen. This reminds me also of your question previously about signals. We need to change so there's a shared vision in situations where all of the factors aren't always explained, or as we said before, where all of the hidden truths aren't always revealed. We need to shift the vision, shift the energy. And like Martin said before, do what we can to eliminate the drama in the room. And that's, it can take time. And like Felipe says, if you're a leader and you don't have the proven relationship or track record to do that, it can be challenging. What I had to learn in the process of being a leader or in helping other leaders by supporting them during events was, I promised them I'll be there to help them shift the energy. It takes a lot of my own energy to do it, but it's one of the deliverables that I've learned to speak about in the process of preparing for us, because it lets them know under pressure, hey, I've got you. And I think that is the part from a vision perspective. We need to know you may not always hit all the goals, or like yesterday, watching the Mets home opener as the power went out. It can be a very different perspective, but we'll work around it. And I think the thing also from a signals perspective is letting other people know there's always someone there in the room. I've got you and I will help you navigate it. It's not something we have the confidence to say on a first date or in an interview. In an interview, and I thank Felipe for being here. People used to ask me what was my strength. I now can say I can help you shift the energy, but it's not something I ever would say during an interview. I have an appreciation or an understanding of group dynamics, of the goals that are in the room. We have a respect for all parties who are present, and we will make sure that we help you knock them out of the park. I think that's the thing that we have to let people know, that we've got them.
I love that. Thank you. Roy, what's the biggest mistake that you're seeing leaders make in assuming their delivery will speak for itself? You work in a space where perception and positioning are everything. This is probably something you see a lot of, and a lot of mistakes being made, I imagine.
Yeah, I think, I'm obviously listening to everyone else's comments. The one area that I see mistakes being made on a regular basis is they have all these discussions and they don't produce anything to writing. Now, I'm a big believer, and I've seen it in many, many companies, when in a boardroom, the leader puts out his vision or he puts out his statement that's up for discussion. the more times it is put on a board behind him, in other words, that everybody can see it. So let's just assume that just using one of the, a way that we're going to culture in our company. The important thing then is to write onto the board changes of our culture, and then let everyone share their free thoughts and write them all down there so everybody can see them, and then debate each one. And if it's not relevant, then cross it out. So, and everybody sees that it's not. So where do I see a mistake? I see the biggest mistake, that people don't have a written, a visual aspect of where we are talking, and thereby there's no way that they can be misconceived, because it's all written to you. And the things that we disagree on, we cross out. And then we are left with the things that we all know need to become part of the deliverables. And that, for me, is the single biggest mistake. Reducing things to writing, it's so that everybody can see it. Why let people make their own notes? I'll tell you why. Because everyone's notes is different to the next one. When it's up on the board and it says, trust, we want to build strive for world classes. And yesterday's conversation, I said to this woman, the marketing lady, I said, we're never going to achieve world-class service. It's like something ahead of us. But I'll tell you what we can do. We can strive for it. So I would write it up on the board so that everyone can see that. And then we can say, that we agree with this, or we don't agree with it. And if we don't agree with it, again, I say, cross it out. Don't rub it out. Cross it out. So that in people's minds, they remember that word no. Not because when you erase it, you're erasing it from your memory. That's what I think. My name is Roy and I'm out.
That's an interesting perspective on it. Roy, I hadn't thought about that, but that does make sense. And it is interesting, absolutely, the role that having something up on a board that everybody can see plays in the decision making, and the ability of people to feel that they can make comments or contribute. Because I think often you find that there are people have great ideas, but they are too afraid, don't have the confidence to share them, or there's some other reason why they keep silent. So I think that's a really good point. But what you're talking about there leads me onto a question for Ilia, who works in a big organization, about internal communication, Ilia. And so what I'd really like to ask your ideas on are about when timelines get really shrunk down, and so the pressure is really, really on, and then the stakes get higher and everything. How does that affect internal communication and the role of communication internally? Well, mostly today we've been talking about external communication, but I'm interested in your thoughts on this one about internal communication, because this is where it can go so wrong so very, very quickly.
100%. And especially when the communications tend to extend over information that it really is not needed. You need to find the right channel, first of all, the right channel to address whatever the communication is. Sometimes emails go back and forth when a simple call can solve the problem, because you are trying to leave things documented. And I understand sometimes the nature of the content share has to be documented, but when there is adjustment, when there is agreements between 1, 2, or 3 people, a simple call can solve the problem in 5 minutes, rather than having a thread of emails and people copied that sometimes are not even needed, because of there is a tight deadline, there is a potential crisis that needs to be averted, and you need the support of a larger team or more team members, or you need to bring visibility. When visibility is required, when immediate action is required, there can be internal communications coming back and forth, and the key decision makers involved, yes, but one call can solve it all, can save you from reading, from typing, and it is time consuming. You can imagine just simply putting your thoughts, typing, sending, then someone else is replying that they don't agree, or that there's something else, or that there's another person that is actually the person, and you need to make a decision that is not copied. Everything can be solved depending on the channel, and the tighter it is, the faster, the most immediate the communication needs to happen. So calls, team meetings, Zoom meetings is the best way, and remove the noise. Sometimes we see each other, we see our faces, and we start going on tangents and not getting to the point. Now, finding, sometimes it is suppliers, sometimes it is your customer. The customer goes on a tangent, or you have a specific requirement to meet, to get, or a problem to solve, and we don't tackle the problem. We go through the weeds of maybe not having enough resources, of having resources but they're limited, so we need the support of someone else. Leave everything out, get to the point, and find your way to the communication be concise, simple, fast, and everybody will do their job the best they can.
I think talking about being concise is really important. I'm shocking when I write in an email. It's usually about 3 or 4 times longer than it really needs to be, because I write like I'm talking, and then I have to go back and really tighten it all up so that the person doesn't look at the email and go, I'm not going to read this right now. If you want your email to be read, it's got to be short, it's got to be concise, and it's got to be very, very clear about what it is that you want someone to do, the action that you want them to take. So I think that's a really worthwhile point to make, because internal communication can easily get out of hand when people are sitting next to each other at desks and all they're doing is emailing or messaging each other instead of actually having a conversation. So well thought through, Ilia. Thank you so much for that. And Felipe, one for you. Have you ever seen anyone overlooked for a role because their delivery wasn't clearly understood or articulated?
That's an amazingly excellent question there, Linnea, because and I'm gonna, there's two sides to this, because one thing that I have always said is that when you are communicating what you want, so you gotta speak up, and that I always, in that example that you're giving, people have been overlooked because they haven't spoken up. But I don't put that on the leaders. I always put that on the individual, and this is why. I always think that the days of people being handpicked by a leader for a job are over. And that should not be happening because of two reasons. One, it's not fair. And two, that person does not even know if they want the job or if they're capable. Sometimes they're doing it just because, well, if the leader thinks I can do it, I must be able to. And then they don't get the right support and they fail. The other side of it, I want people who want that next role. I want people that are hungry for it, that want it and know what they want and can communicate that to me. And if they can't do that, they're going to be overlooked. So I do put that on them. And the other thing, if I can share quickly, is it goes back to knowing your team. If you know your team, you know their communication styles, you know their delivery. I talked about communication styles before, but leaders have got to be agile and flexible in their communication styles. And I don't think they always realize that. They think, I'm a good communicator. I'm like, okay, when everything's great, sure you are. But when the, what hits the fan, what kind of communicator are you? And here's where I think employees and people need to understand, hey, when there's a crisis, I'm looking at you for direct communication. Tell me what to do. Give me orders. Let me go take care of it. I need that clear direction. I don't want to debate it with you. When everything's great, I want to be heard. I want my opinion heard. I want to share my opinion. So leaders need to be able to know how to shift that and say, hey, okay, it's a crisis. It's not time to get everyone's opinions and have a debate. I need to give my communication clear, concise, and make sure that people understand but I also have to know my team well enough to know who I may need to follow up with to make sure that they got it. And I think that's that emotional intelligence and understanding the communication styles, because people are going to be overlooked if they don't speak up. That's a fact. And that's something that I think it's up to the person. Leaders can encourage, but they can't do it for you.
Some really good points. Thank you. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've got off to a bit of a late start this morning, so we've run over time, but I'd like to wrap it up by giving each of our panelists today an opportunity just to leave us with one clear message, something that resonates for them in terms of this particular topic about communication, delivery, interpretation, visibility for leaders. I think there's a lot more that can be said around this, but I think we've opened the door to some thoughts for people who are in situations where they are delivering to people, they are delivering to teams or to potential stakeholders, and they need to think about how they can do that in a way that is going to get them the results that they want. So let's start with Mel. We'll go around the room again with a final insight that you would like to leave us with, Mel.
I'm really looking forward to a replay, because the things that we're talking about from the perspective of leaders and others in the room, they affect our awareness, our perceptions, our reality, and our vision. And to kind of think of those 4 factors as something, as opposed to just paying attention to outcomes. And especially if it's a pressure cooker or an urgent or critical situation. I think Ilia's comment about, and Martin, about succinct, candid, and as Felipe said, really with clarity, some really clear communication is essential.
I like that. Thank you. Roy.
My mute button. I think the single most important thing that I want to take away from this, and I've seen it so often, is this aspect of reducing things to writing, so that people can visually see what it is that we want delivered. There can be no confusion if it's written down, not done by you or me, but written down on a board, so everybody can see it. And at the end of the session, for the leader to say, and I'm going to use the words, and I know Felipe will agree with me, everyone will agree with me, but I know that Felipe particularly. We have all agreed, you remember the word, we have all agreed that this is our process for delivery. And there, write that down, but make sure that we're all on the same path for that delivery. So we are all committed to that delivery right over there, which we've all been part of making that decision. For me, that's the biggest takeaway today.
Right, that's a very sensible one. What about you, Ilia?
It is to be as concise as possible. Sometimes being polite makes us, and adding extra words to our communications, creating confusion, making others create emotions through what we say, to what we write, to how we say things. With my corporate job, I've learned to say the least amount of words as possible. I might not sound very, very nice, even though I am, but the message, the correct delivery is always presented before being likable.
Yep, that makes sense to me, because I think delivery alone isn't enough. We leaders are judged on how that delivery is experienced by others, right? And that's what you were saying, is if you be concise, then they will see that delivery in a way that resonates and works with the culture of your organization, which is clearly say as few words as possible. I wouldn't fit in there at all.
However, again, I bring the point of the channel where the communications is delivered.
Yeah.
Through a call, you will see expressions, gestures, smiles, eyes, hands. In written communication, the simplest, the better for me. And it has worked because what people need is what people receive. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. Felipe, some final thoughts from you on this one.
So I'm gonna double or triple down on what Ilia and Martin said as far as being concise. But before I say that, I would say that when you're sending out mass communication to them, and I do that a lot in the workplace, I hit 3 levels of communication. I put out the written, I make sure that there's the visuals out there of the communication, and I do the verbal follow-up communication. And I think that's important for all leadership to know if you're doing the masses. Now, to general communication that's being presented, concise, quick, clear, I agree 110%. It's one of the reasons why when I was doing college recruiting at the very beginning of my career, someone told me that you might tend to ramble a little bit when you're presenting to the students. So come up with a short message that they're going to remember, because every minute that you keep on rambling is a minute of information they forgot. I'm like, oh crap. I was like, I got to shut up. So that's where Felipe's 5 originated. I actually said, I'm going to come up with 3 to 5 points for them to remember. And it just started coming up with the students, like, don't chase the money, go after the passion, network with people, try something new, and that's where those 5 came from. And I think that's what I always want to do, is keep that message short and concise and leave them with at least at the most 5 things to remember. And then the rest is just noise.
We have covered such a lot of ground on this topic today. Like Mel, I'm going to be really interested to go back over and pick up some of the points that I've inevitably missed while people have been talking, because I think this is such an important issue about how leaders can deliver in a way that people pick up the right message. They actually take on board what is really being said and being meant, and not just making assumptions that fit their own narrative. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And it's always a pleasure of mine at the end of the month to come back and host these things. And so, Roy, I shall leave you to wrap up for today.
Yeah, I want to interrupt you for 1 second. What are your last takeaways?
My last takeaway is that it's a really interesting one, that you have to think about how people are going to perceive you. Put yourself in the shoes of the person who you are addressing, or the people you are addressing. Think about what it is like for them to hear your message. Are you rambling? Are you being concise? Are you being clear with your message? And how will it be perceived and, more importantly, understood? And I think the best way to do that is to actually think about what it's like from the perspective of listening to it, to hearing your message. That's my final takeaway on it. Thank you for pulling me up on that one, Roy. I'd completely forgotten I had an opportunity to speak too.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for our monthly guest. I wish we could get her here more often, but we can't, and we understand that. But it's always good to have you. You come with a wealth of knowledge. And here's the other thing: your prep is absolutely impeccable, if I can say that. So a couple of little bits and pieces. Sure, Felipe, something to say, Felipe?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, I think with all this message delivery, we said it before, but I think when we use analogies, use relevant analogies for your audiences. If I was talking to Roy, I might use a beach analogy. With Lanier, it might be a plantain analogy. With Melanie, it's a baseball analogy. With Ilia, it might be a Spanish or Hispanic analogy. I think that when you are talking to people, like Lanier said, think about that. But the analogies you use, make sure you're relevant, because if I use a Star Wars analogy and you don't like Star Wars, whoosh.
Absolutely. Thank you for our host, Martin, and Mel and Ilia and Felipe, who I really do appreciate the fact that you join us, every single week. And weeks that you don't join us is not because you don't want to; it's because you have something else on. A couple of announcements. Number one, we spoke in terms of the Easter weekend. Should we do it on the Easter weekend or shouldn't we? So I think when I saw in the comment, Merrill made a very valid point. He said, "I will be there." And so therefore, if Merrill's going to be there, we're going to do it. And the reason that we're going to do it on the Easter weekend is because people may be at home. They may be at a place where they've sort of relaxed. And this could be an interesting conversation that they could slip into. So yes, we are going to do it on the Easter weekend. And the second one is that, as you know, we've chosen to stay with the theme for a whole month. So the first month was listening. The second month was delivery. The third month is going to be transparency. Oh, are you like that one, Felipe? So if any of you, and I'm talking about anybody that's listening and I'm particularly, sort of aiming this at Felipe, if anyone's got any topics around transparency, it'll put on the table. Because don't forget, we've got 4 months to talk about different aspects of it. So that is my last thing. And then just have a super weekend, everyone. We really do appreciate all the comments that are put in the chat. We really do appreciate people's participation. This is what we do. Is we call this the Disruptive Business Leadership LinkedIn Live, so that we can share insights, we can learn something, we can take something away. Ideas that work. Some of us have got ideas that don't work. Some of us ideas have got to work. And if we can all learn from each other, then the pieces all make the bigger puzzle. And I call it the tapestry of life. The tapestry of life, we're all weaving in different pieces, because that tapestry of life does not get finished. It can be continued. So my last thought is, don't forget, you come to this session, Lene, you've heard this so many times, all of you, I suppose. You come with this basket and you've put a couple of ideas in the basket that you thought, wow, that's a really good idea. But that's only as good as what you do with it. So at the end of the show, put it on, take it off the dining table, put it in front of you and say, now, let me look in this basket. There's 7 ideas in here. I'm going to take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever you want to do, and I'm going to implement and action those. The less you take out and leave it as I learned something today. I'll tell you why. Because tomorrow you've forgotten that. And the next day, yes, you'll remember it somewhere. But when you action something, you are physically moving from A to B. When you think about it, you remain in A and it's in your head. So that's my little piece of useless information today. Have a super, super weekend. And I hope I don't mess this up going forward. See you all next week, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for a session of Disruptive Business Leadership on the topic of transparency.